Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting for today's date of November 13th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Brenda. Roll call. Grenier. Oh, sorry. I got it buried here. Grenier here.
Yates.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Martin. Here. All present.
No.
All right. Okay, let's see, what do we got today? Catalyst is the assessor fees they had changed from my daughter. And so we are now tweaking those out to him.
General obligation bonds?
Yeah, that's the interest for this fall. During fall time, those are due. We have some landscape bonds that were returning. Mid-city, they kind of send us invoices like every couple of months, but that's 2 months worth plus some repairs and maintenance that they did for our system. The paint and Dolan bill came in, which was approved, I believe, in September meeting, so that work is complete. And built. So that is Whispering Ridge North. It is one of their good payments. So,
Where do we stand with transferring the system over to the new one?
we are close.
Will we be ready by January?
Oh, yeah. I'm not.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to pay submit the bills for payment to the village board.
I'll make a motion to submit the bills to the board as presented by the village clerk.
Second. We have a motion and a second to submit the bills to the village board for payment. Obviously, no, just further discussion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned.
I'm getting there. Okay, I would like to open the public hearing for the 2024 Village of Land and Budget on November 13th, 2023 at 6:45. Do we have any questions or comments from the public? I'm sorry?
Do you want my need to present what she does?
Yep, you want to go ahead and.
All right.
So hopefully everybody grabbed a couple page handout here that does summarize the 2024 budget. Just a couple of areas to note as part of the preparation of the budget. The village board started with the expenditure side of the budget, and then we finished with the revenue side. We met a couple times over the last month or so to put together the budget that's being presented this evening. Again, when you look at the budget in comparison to the budget for 2023, when you look at general government, so this is your clerk treasurer department, your elections, judge, insurance, building area, see a small increase in the budgeted figure there by roughly $36,000. Couple of reasons for that: the clerk treasurer department went down in comparison to the previous year. There was some budgeted software purchases in 23 that are not required in 24. Elections, you saw an increase in that category due to more elections in 2024. Also increased costs for printing and postage. The municipal judge category went down by roughly $7,800, and that's mainly within the area of salaries due to the decrease in the number of hours needed to do that work. Municipal buildings saw a very large increase, and there was some additional money, roughly $50,000, that was budgeted for some parking lot work during 2024, so an increase there. So again, overall, that general government category is being proposed at a roughly $36,000 increase. Public safety, year over year, is actually seeing a decrease. Now, both police and fire see increases, but the decrease is mainly in the inspection category. So the more revenue you collect, the more building you have, the higher your inspection costs are, because a percentage of the revenue collected goes over to the building inspectors. So PD sees roughly a $22,000 increase over the previous year. The main reason for that is really some restructuring of the positions within the fire or in the police department, and switching from some part-time to a full-time officer, and then some additional related benefits. The fire department went up to $359,000 from $331,000, and that is a figure that is provided to the village by the Menominee Falls, and is really not open for negotiation until future agreements are again renegotiated. Building inspection, again, $106,000 decrease, and again, just anticipating less building permit revenue coming in during 2024. Within the public works category, that category also saw a large increase, that is by roughly $80,000. Again, a large portion of that $60,000 is due to some road patching and striping that needs to be done. So there was an increase of $55,000 there. And then also the budgeted figure for snow and ice control was increased to $35,000 over $15,000 in the previous years. And again, that's a number that fluctuates, obviously, based on weather conditions. Your health and sanitation section, this is where your rubbish and recycling removal is included. That saw roughly an $11,000 increase. A good portion of that, almost $100,000, are the charges for garbage and recycling. Those go on to tax bills, so you also have an offsetting revenue. So there is no cost to the village for those services. The remaining categories within that section are consistent, and again, that increase is mainly seen in the recycling category. Lastly, within the park and planning commission area, also saw an increase in that category by roughly $30,000, and that again is due to some parking lot work that needs to be done at the park. Also some maintenance costs on the existing DPW vehicle. So they built in some maintenance reserves there. So overall, the general fund expenditures being proposed in the 2024 budget tonight is $1.324 million, up roughly $100,000 over the previous year. And again, those large capital items, the parking lot is what is really contributing to that. So when you look at the revenues that are collected, besides taxes, the village has many sources of revenue, whether it's state revenues or interest income or various fees. So overall, the revenues that come from other sources besides taxes is $708,000. Included in there for 2024 are two items that are not typically included in there. There's a $54,000 budgeted for the sale of the village property. And then there's another $117,000 that's included to help offset those capital costs in the form of a borrowing, whether they go to the village goes to the bank or borrows internally from the sewer fund. Those are the revenue sources there. So overall, the taxes being proposed to be levied for the village is $616,000, up from $528,000 in the previous year. In addition to the items I just mentioned, the village also levies to pay debt service costs. So there is a portion of debt that is village debt. It includes both the village and the TIDs that are included. The total debt service required for 2024 is $572,000. $520,000 of that comes from the TIDs. So that'll come in the form of increment. So ultimately, the levy for the village is $52,218, up from 48,000 in the previous year, so up a little bit. Really due to that borrowing, we did factor in some interest due on that borrowing in 2024. So overall, the total taxes being proposed $668,348. And if you look on the summary page, you'll note that overall, that's roughly a 40-cent increase per thousand to each homeowner, roughly a 15.78% tax increase over the previous year. Included in the information provided was also a pie chart that was requested to show a little bit of the breakdown on how the resources of the village are spent. If you look at the pie chart, you'll note that most or over half of the expenditures within the village are within your public safety area for police and fire, with the next largest category being your general government category, which again is clerk and treasurer and board and municipal building and insurance and that type of category. Any questions regarding any of that information? Any comments from the board? Something I forgot to mention?
The only question I have is, I noticed that the state legislature passed and the governor signed it, that the shared revenue is going to increase.
Correct.
Will that adjust our budget?
That's a discussion that I think you need to make as a board, or a decision you need to make as a board. You can either adjust the budget, but then ultimately, what do you want to do with that? What is that gonna offset? Do you want to leave that off the budget and let the budget play through? And then you do have that additional 60,000, I believe it was, to offset whether you offset it against the borrowing we talked about, or if there's another shortfall in another revenue category, you kind of have that as a cushion, I guess I would call that. But that's a board decision to make. But that is not included in the figures I presented to the
I
same.
noticed that. That's why I was wondering if you were aware of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions for Wendy or comments, thoughts? Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close it.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion before we close? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The public session is closed. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Village of Lannon Village Board to order on Monday, November the 13th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Just like to ask everyone to please make sure that your phones are on silent. Raise and remove your headgear for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Roby.
Here.
Grenier. Here. Blake. Here. Martin. Here. Nellis.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Yates.
Here. Statement of public notice.
Has been posted.
Right. Item 5, discussion of possible action on reading correction and approval of the minutes from the 10/9/23 village board meeting.
Make a motion to pass the minutes from the 10/29 village board meeting.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meetings from the 10/9/23 village board meeting. Any further discussion? Corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, discussion possible action on the reading correction And approval of the minutes from the 9/11/23 village board meeting.
Those were on your desk tonight, sorry, I didn't make use of that.
I'll make a motion to pass the minutes from the 9/11/23 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 9/11/23 village board meeting minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, discussion of possible action on the reading correction and approval of the minutes from the 6/12/23 village board meeting. Going in the way back machine here.
I'll make a motion to approve the 6/12/2023 minutes.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Brenda, on item 6. It says address is 2012 West Main Street to light industrial. There should be a digit missing, right? Towards the end of the lane,
Which item, I'm sorry?
item 6.
6. Oh, yeah. 0, I think it's 1. I'll have to look that up, yeah. Oh, 20. Should be 151. Not sure where that came from.
20151.
It's just like the heading of the item, right?
On the item, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good catch, Gary.
I'll amend my motion to reflect Terry's changes. Oh, perfect.
We have a motion and a second to approve corrected minutes for the 6/12/23 village board meeting. Any other discussion, comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Then if we could just post those, the website and those get finalized. Committee reports, finance personnel.
We'll cover that at item 23.
Thank you, legislative,
Nothing at this time.
parks, rec and beautification,
We'll, believe we have an agenda item later that we can discuss.
public safety.
I just wanted everybody to know, we don't get them often, but we did have a house fire in the village on 11/7. Family's okay, animals are okay. There is a GoFundMe set up, and the link to that is on my trustee Facebook page.
Thank you, Amy. Public works, recycling and sewer.
The Good Hope Road project is done. And the flags for the hydrants just came in today and they'll be mounted on the county right away. Hydrants. Other than that, I have nothing.
Thank you, Ron. Corey,
Nothing at this time.
thank you. Department reports, clerk's office.
Nothing else.
Like,
I actually didn't even think about it.
recording in progress. Police department,
Aside from the monthly report, nothing new to report. We did participate in the county's trunk or treat for Halloween, and we did collect 25 pounds of unwanted drugs during our drug take back a couple of Saturdays ago.
nice.
I do have one question. The signs that we have in the roads. For the, at the, bug line crossing, when do we remove those because of winter coming?
So
They're gonna plow around them?
they have in the past, we've never moved them.
Well, we never had them in the past.
Which one did we talking about?
Those ones that are in the median.
Oh, you said in the street.
In the center line.
Yeah, we removed that.
Before the first snowfall.
Yeah.
That already happened.
Yeah.
For the first real one. All right, item 10, citizen comments. This is meant for public comments on any subject without any discussion by board of trustee members or action except for possible referral to a governmental body or village agent. Do we have any public comments for tonight? Dan?
I just wanna say that, because I know I didn't get last meeting, that the RSIP show was a good success. Probably had more cars than we've ever had. Really came out over 900 cars, and the spectator count was extremely high. Everything went smoothly. We have nothing to report as far as problems. So I just wanted to, and I'm working with yourself and Colleen on getting some of that money spent.
Awesome.
Good job.
Well, great job again to you and your team and everyone involved. So thank you very much for that. Any other citizen comments?
What are the dates that the flushing is supposed to be done?
Flushing's done. Hydrant flushing's done.
When did they do it? Last week?
During the scheduled time, last week, I think.
October 30th to November 2nd.
Yep, it's all been done. Any other public comments? No? Okay. Item number 11, discussion and possible action on approval of the proposed 2024 Village of Land and budget. We just got a refresher from Wendy. I will just make one comment on that. I was discussing the shared revenue a little bit with Wendy and Brenda before the meetings, and my suggestion is to just leave that as a little reserve. It's kind of found money, and if we have some shortfalls in some other areas, we can help make up for it. I know we've got a few of those. If you look at the budget sheets that Brenda printed out, there's a couple areas in there where we're falling far short of our expected revenues. So it might be nice to offset something like that. Otherwise, the only other thing we could do is to divert that money to borrow less, as we discussed in our budget meetings. So we've presented the budget as we discussed it at our workshops. That's what's before you here, and that's what I'm recommending that we approve. But
I make a motion that we approve the budget as presented by Wendy.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the 2024 Village of Land and budget as presented by Wendy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Wendy. Item number 12, discussion of possible action to authorize Bond Reason to draft a resolution with the intent to update the municipal fee schedule. There's been some discussions off and on throughout the course of the last year, I would say, possibly about updating some of the municipal fees that we charge. I don't know that really much has been done to keep us up to date and current in terms of comparable fee structures with other municipalities around us. So I know Trustee Reek did a lot of research on this and kind of headed up this effort. Did you want to say anything, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, Nicole and Brenda put together the current fees that we are able to update. There are some that are state and municipal fees that cannot be regulated by the municipality, only regulated by the state. So we had no ability to change that. I do know that Paul put a lot of work into updating our building permit type fees and all things that would be associated with that. So he did a lot of work updating that with what's going on with the municipalities around us to get us up to date to everyone else.
So the ones that I was able to do, I did research with both Sussex and Menominee Falls. Some of our fees I left as they were because we were either at the same rate or a little bit higher than them. The ones that we were deficient in, I did raise to the current levels of the surrounding municipalities. So your little sheet that we have in front of you, you can see which ones were left alone and which ones were upgraded. Most of them, the surcharge that we upped it to was minimal. But then again, there was a couple of them that were way behind in, and we, like I said, we brought them up to what current municipalities are doing right now, so.
Thank you. So, I apologize. It appears I got a little ahead of myself here. So, the requisite step to enact any of these changes, which are actually going to be contained in the next couple of agenda items, is to authorize Von Briesen to draft a resolution to that intent. So I would entertain a motion to authorize them to do so.
I'll make a motion to authorize Von Briesen to draft the resolution to update our municipal fee schedule.
Second.
You have a motion and a second, any other, yes, sir.
Could you add an effective date for the fee schedule, January 1?
Yes,
2024?
to make it effective January 1 of 2024.
Thank you.
No, I'm not second.
We have an amended motion and an amended second. Any other discussion? Comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 13, discussion and possible action to approve updated fees. So Steve just gave you the rundown on methodology and how he got to these proposed amounts.
I'll make a motion that we amend the current fees to the suggested fees by the level.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve updated fee schedule. Any further discussion?
We didn't want to add a special use permit fee under like conditional use there.
My assumption with the blank there was that those get negotiated individually, or how does that work?
Well, I don't recall that we've had many, but recently we have been busy in this area, particularly with regard to contractors' yard, outdoor storage. And the first one we went through was quite expensive. And I suspect they will continue to be challenging and time consuming because of the special circumstances and the multiple uses. I guess I would invite Ben Wood's input on that.
Yeah, we've only done one in recent history, and that was the HM Brandt property over here, and they did a professional service fee reimbursement agreement for what it's worth. And I don't recall if they paid a separate special use permit fee on top of that or not. So at least in that regard, the professional fees are getting covered.
Did you have a comment about the ordinances, Jerry?
Well, in the past, the conditional use and the special use track very closely to almost being the same thing. So that's what we used in the past 10 years ago.
That was kind of my assumption, was they were somewhat interchangeable, just
Yeah.
based on the circumstances and your desired outcome. But it probably wouldn't hurt to specify that in our schedule.
Yeah, just make it the same, it's conditional.
And make it the same $500 fee.
Would there be any objection on the part of the board to also include language to include a professional services agreement with those?
On both of those items?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Sure.
opposed to that. I would encourage that, actually. And I'd like to see that executed and the deposit in the clerk's office before we begin any discussions with village consultants. This, too often it seems those discussions get well down the road before this ever comes up. So I think we had a motion and a second, did we not?
Yeah.
What amount do we think of the professional services?
There's a set amount for that. I believe it's at 5,000. Is that correct? Yeah.
$5,000 deposit. Yeah, it's subject to the agreement, and the agreement specifies what the fee is. And the terms that go along with those agreements.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you, Hector. So would we have amended motions?
Let's rescind the amendment and I'll make a new one to include the special assessment permit fees equal or comparable to the conditional use permit fees and adding an hourly rate.
And I think you meant special use permit.
Yes,
right?
special use permit. In conjunction with the conditional use permit. For both $500.
And then we had to add the verbiage for the professional services. Hector wanted correct, Hector?
Yes.
What was it? Ben said that it's all automatically in the service agreement,
Right.
The rate.
so, yeah.
The rate is
The
right.
rate is.
Yeah, it's a bit of semantics. The agreement specifies that they have to put down a deposit. The agreement specifies the deposit amount. It's typically $5,000 unless staff deem otherwise based on the magnitude of the project. And then it also stipulates that they pay actual costs. And if they go beyond the $5,000, that they just get invoiced on an hourly rate basis.
That sounds like it covers the need.
Yeah.
In the agreement.
So in an odd way, it's like if you ever wanted to change the fee, you would change the agreement. So as long as your fee schedule references the agreement, it's probably adequate.
Right. I think Hector's point was he's just requesting that we require a professional services agreement along with any conditional use permit or special use permit applications.
We don't have that already.
No. I think it's been developers kind of discretionary and
Yeah.
whether or not anybody thinks about it and has it done.
Okay, then let's add that to it. Add the professional agreement.
We have a new motion from Mr. Nellis
I'll second it.
and a second. Does that meet your satisfaction? Yes. Any other questions or comments from that? Well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, discussion of possible action on increasing the building permit fees. So along with these fees, we have Mr. Lawner from Lake Country Inspections, who is our building inspector. He's kind enough to join us tonight. Skip bingo.
Nothing dinner,
Yeah.
working straight. Yeah.
Well, we'll get you out of here quick. You can maybe even make the kickoff if you live close enough for Monday Night Football.
Well, the police officer sitting here, I should make it.
All right, Paul, do you want to kind of go over the, just a high level view of your recommendations of, changes to the fee structures?
Sure. I was asked, to provide maybe an updated fee schedule for you and, I went through every community that I covered. I talked to, a couple other communities. I have the, Wisconsin, Building Inspectors Association numbers and stuff like that. And as of right now, your fee schedule is the lowest one that we have anywhere. The 30 cents a square foot for new homes and stuff like that is substantially low. I know Lisbon has not changed their fee schedule. There's been talk about it. But they're not taking any action this year as far as I'm aware, after I talked to their inspector. But we tried to bring you, at least out of the basement, so we went to the 38 cents a square foot. That'll put you above my Genesee community, which is at 35 cents. I hate to include Shaniqua, but it is a community I covered there at 43 cents a square foot. And then the town of Polk is at 41 cents a square foot for new homes. So the 38 cents is gonna put you average to maybe slightly above average. This would be a fee schedule that you can hopefully take in for the next 7-8 years without really having to consider anything. What happens with fee schedules is at some point you become the lowest, then you kind of catapult near the top, and then as the years go by, you drop back down and you redo it again. So I asked Brenda, we weren't quite sure when the last fee schedule change was for Landon, but 30 cents was fairly low. Minimum permit fees in Genesee for mechanicals are at $100. So that was changed on the proposal for you guys also. The other thing that you may want to consider is Landon has the 10% administrative fee. Understand that you're gonna take a big hit in permits this next year. We're done with burg development, which was, I believe, 150 units. Over the last 4 or 5 years. That's done. We issued out, or we will be issuing out the last permit on that this week. And then they're done. Unless we approve some more property for them. The apartment complex, which was also part of our income this year, gone. So really you're gonna be dealing with Sewall and their Woodbridge, Stonebridge. Stonewood. I don't know why you can't remember it. Over here, and then we're also, there's probably 0.5 lots still available over in Whispering Ridge. I don't know if much else as far as subdivisions or anything coming forward. So you're gonna kind of go back to that sleepy nature where you're gonna be the remodels, the furnaces, the air conditioners, stuff like that. So the time for the administrative fee, if you wanted to bump that, which should be considered, but that's strictly a municipal fee and not mine. Although I collected for you on the permits, so.
And where do we fall in terms of some of those other communities that you mentioned in terms of that 10%?
The Village of Shaniqua was at 35%. Genesee does not collect one, and Town of Polk does not collect one. They had an additional fee on permits last year or 2 years ago. That they took the dollar amount plus square footage, so it was kind of an administrative fee built in there. But they were having complaints about the multiple fees in one fee schedule, so they dropped that and then raised the permit fees to kind of balance it out. So we're still collecting about the same amount of money, but there's just not an administrative fee or a secondary fee shown on that calculations page. I know other communities, I can't remember if Glendale was either at 40% or they were pretty high when I was working there years ago. I don't remember what they were at. Mequon does not charge one. It just depends how active the people in the office are in relation to the inspection department. A lot of communities that have their own inspectors wouldn't charge administrative fees because then everything's in-house. So this is just something extra that is charged by Landon to accommodate the work that the ladies do in the office for the inspector. As far as, getting stuff all together and some of the filing and stuff that takes place with it.
Should have done this a few years ago.
Yeah, we're about 3 years late on that one. Brenda, do you feel that there's a need to increase this or just leave it the same? Do you have a recommendation?
Have a preference. I know Menominee Falls, like some of their buildings and stuff, I know they have like a 15% admin fee on there. I haven't really noticed any other places, but it doesn't matter.
Anyone on the board have thoughts about what we should do with that?
Well, if we're gonna bump it up, might as well do it now. While we're here discussing it. Instead of the 10% that we're doing right now, maybe bump it up to 15 or 20. I mean, we're really not gonna be getting much revenue from it because there is such a limited amount of permitting that's gonna be going on, really. At
Yeah,
this
I
time.
think,
But Collie Farm in a few years down the road, that that would bring in some of the income. So I mean, we might as well raise it now. It's just at what percentage do we want to do that? I don't know how much time it takes out of Brenda and Nicole's day when you're working with permit and stuff. I mean, what?
I mean,
What,
we're logging like occupancies and, you know, when we get the emails that they get them, we record when they get their occupancy, when they get their bond, when their bond gets paid back, when, you know. It's kind of that kind of tracking stuff. and
Okay.
Things like that.
still taking time though, right? So. I mean, I would suggest 20%.
I think I'll agree with that.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I agree with you.
I agree with 20%.
Okay.
He's got the horse in the race. right?
Yep, I got. It's a collection.
Yeah, I think they'll just, I think that's a good amount to cover our bases and our administrative costs for Brenda and Nicole.
And we need to effective January 1st.
Effective January 1st with all the others, yes.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we increase the administrative fee to 20% on the building permits effective January 1st of 2024.
And a new fee structure for the building.
And the new fee structure for the other remaining building permits that Paul had presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the building inspector's recommendation on new fee schedule for building permits and an increase to 20% for the administrative fee, all to take effect 1/1/2024.
Point of information, there are forms for the various applications that were attached. Would you like to comment about these permit forms?
So the permit forms that are attached, one's the building, obviously one's the building permit form. The building permit fee schedule is the front 3 pages. It's four. Four is all building permit, and then the mechanicals, we've always adopted those as a permit form. So all the numbers have been changed on the permit forms for the mechanicals to reflect the $100 minimum fee. The 8 cents a square foot, 10 cents a square foot for residential / commercial, and then the base fees, all that are on the actual mechanical permits. So when we adopt the fee schedule, we adopt the first 4 pages, which is the building permit fee schedule, and the other 3 pages, the electric, plumbing, and HVAC are all adopted by form.
Can I ask this, since we've adjusted the admin fee, do you adjust the forms?
Yes, I will make the changes to the forms and I will have those delivered.
Because I noticed those have to be adjusted too.
Yeah, and I did not change the administrative fee because her and I, we kind of talked about it, but we didn't know where it was gonna go.
But you have it in your system that you can.
I can make the change, yes.
Okay, so we have the motion in that second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Paul. Item 15, discussion and possible action on a joint powers agreement for a 911 emergency systems.
One of those contracts we approved.
I make a motion to accept the joint powers agreement for the 911 emergency system.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 16, discussion of possible action on 2023 tax collection agreement with Waukesha County. Same deal here. So we will-
I'll make a motion to accept the tax collection agreement with Waukesha County for 2023.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17. Discussion about information sent to the neighbors regarding the planned sale of the village-owned lot located at West Good Hope Road and action to designate a village contact person for this project and possible action to commence the process for the sale. As you all know, we've had some discussions about selling the village-owned lot. We had some neighbors, joining the property come and speak during the public comment section of last month's meeting. We've subsequently had some further communications with those neighbors, just as an act of good faith, and goodwill to try to make sure that everybody's understanding what's going on. We've done some additional investigation through Strand and Von Briesen in terms of the legality and legalness of our claims that it is a saleable lot with rightful legal access. I don't know if Ben or Hector would like to speak on this topic additionally beyond what's been discussed. I would invite you to do so.
We sent out a separate letter along with the documents that we relied upon in advising the village that this lot is saleable and has access, ingress, and egress access. And we sent it to all of the adjoining neighbors and one business down the street. I'm not sure how they got on mailing this, but to date, as of this afternoon, there was no follow-up inquiry by any of the neighbors or questions about anything that we had sent out. Prior to that point, prior to the last meeting where Trace Hummel, who sent out this letter, was attending in my stead, I had received a call from Mrs. Jones, who hinted that they might be engaging a lawyer, they might be considering some kind of a lawsuit. That has never materialized. I was very clear in speaking with her that we wanted to be open about this, and that if they had any information that undercut what we believe to be the facts, to inform us accordingly. And subsequent to that conversation, the individuals who were referenced by President Gates appeared. Hopefully, they all have talked amongst each other and hopefully may have concluded that what they were assuming was not entirely based on the legal facts, and that the village is in a position to proceed forward. I recommended for the benefit of good relations with the neighbors and the management of this, that you designate someone to be a contact person for the village, because I think sometimes people, if they talk to different individuals, come away with different impressions. And we want to basically be delivering the same message, which is basically the village to resolve a legal difference, acquired the lot in conjunction with a lawsuit settlement. And the village has now reached a point where it is exploring the feasibility of liquidating that asset. So that's all that I have to report on that. I don't know if Ben has received any further overtures.
I will just say, after John Peterson specifically made his comments during public session, public comments last month, where I interpreted what he was saying of, you know, they were cooperative with the village in giving us a water main utility easements through there for the water projects. He was sort of insinuating that we may have underhandedly snuck in some access rights to the lot that weren't related to water in there. So with President Yates's blessing, I called John and just kind of aired that out and reiterated that the utility easement was purely language to do with things that are normally in a utility easement, which is to be able to access, operate, and maintain the utilities that are underground. That, you know, as far as explicitly providing access back there, that agreement was just, that easement was mute on that issue. It was irrelevant to the task at hand. And just kind of reiterated to him that the village was relying on previously recorded and approved CSMs and this 1985 agreement that makes it pretty clear that there's access, and told him that I wouldn't be involved from there on out. I think it was just within a day of when they had received the letter from Bryson's office that I believe came from Trace. So directed John to follow up with either Patrick or Trace if there was anything else. But just wanted to clear the air on that one.
So my interpretation is, I think we're at a point now where I think we've made reasonable efforts to put aside any, you know, objections, and we've kind of done our homework and presented the case. We haven't received any contention to our claim. So I think it's time to move forward and get this thing liquidated. So I don't know if there's someone that has a particular interest on the board in heading up those efforts or managing that process or not, but if there is, speak up. Oh, you're not looking for more to do?
I can do it. I mean, I've kind of started a little bit down that road, as long as I've done it, haven't done any harm. Yeah.
I think Kelly's talked to them.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think when this first came up, Colleen felt that we should give them a heads up and went back and made some efforts to initiate some contact with the residents. And if you're willing to do that, I would deem it appropriate to
So specifically,
keep moving forward with that.
just let them know that we are moving forward with the listing of the property for sale.
Yeah, I think a couple of things to be considered that I think were communicated to me from Ben in his conversation. You know, they had inferred that they would, you know, like to at least have some sort of say about what goes there and this and that, and I pretty clearly said no. It's, you know, unless you have some sort of homeowners association that has, you know, covenants and restrictions and bylaws and dictates all that stuff, then it's really up to, you know, they just have to meet the same zoning and setback and building requirements as any other structure in the village. But they did express also some concern about, you know, the newly surfaced road. That I would agree with, and I would suggest that we, you know, take some steps to protect the investment that we just made in that road. Because it's not as structurally,
Rigid,
yeah.
Robust as.
yeah,
Yeah.
as a regular street.
I mean, private roads are built to a lower standard than public roads, and it's probably not even up to private road, really. I mean, it was in bad shape. We did do a mill and overlay on that stretch of road. It's not new road. So it'd be a shame to see it get damaged. I know that when Whispering Ridge, when we had just gotten our final lift done over there. Shortly after that, Berg came into the picture and bought some lots there and wanted to build them out and stuff. And so the village did thankfully require him to put a bond down, I believe, or there was an agreement. It was
It's an escrow, isn't it? What is the term that you use?
Financial
Access,
security.
there was was it an access and indemnity agreement or something?
So if they
along
wreck
those
the
lines?
road, there's money set aside to
Right.
cover the,
Letter
yeah,
credit, I do.
a letter of credit.
Yeah.
So, my question would be, we're gonna list the lot. how do we determine our listing agent? Do we want to try to sell it ourselves without paying for we have an attorney and we have the ability to do a title search. There should be really no reason to list it with MLS except for MLS. We could make an effort to list the property for sale by owner, if you want to say, at least for an initial 30-day period. And then if we feel like the benefit of having the multiple listing service available would be something you want to do. And I don't know, is there any discussion on that? Because remember, you're 6%, 5%, it is a substantial amount of that lot that we would be giving up. I think it's worth the effort to at least try to list it. What do you think?
Well-
I think of municipalities have a site for sale of excess properties.
No.
I don't
Not
think so.
real estate.
There's a government auction
Yeah.
website, but that's different.
I just think, I can understand where you're coming from, Colleen, with trying to save the 6% or 7%, whatever the realtor would charge, but I also feel that in real estate, the most likely way to sell something is right off the get-go. And if we sell it by owner, how are you gonna advertise it? You're gonna have word of mouth, you might put something on social media but it's not gonna get out there to where you're gonna have buyers coming. Cause it's gonna be hard to find, first of all. Second of all, if you live in the village, you know where it is, probably more than likely. But if someone's driving around land trying to find this, they're gonna be like, where is this thing?
It's tucked away.
It's tucked away. And without having an MLS, I think your audience
You're not
is
gonna develop a bidding war either.
right, and you're not gonna
We were
get,
talking about what our list price would be and that the market would bear what the market would bear, because consistently we've seen properties sell for more than they're listing for, if they carry the value.
right.
We might be saving the agent fee, but we'll still be paying Hector's professional fees.
And Ben,
He's the
if
one
there's
that's
anything
got-
with
yeah.
Ben's, so, I mean,
Those will probably be more.
And even if we list it on our own, we're still gonna pay the buyer's agents half, they're 3%. So really, you're looking at saving 3%. If you look at like one of the people I contacted, they do, here's the like. They're only like 1.9%. They only take 1.9% instead of 3. Yeah, so I don't know, what's your,
Well, and to be fair too, we've also talked to Dawn and another real estate agent over the last year and a half, and they've invested time into it, and I feel kind of crappy, not maybe picking one of the people who have helped us to establish the market value.
I say just look at the agents.
Take the headache off.
Well, my perspective is that, that is what the real estate industry is all about. Competitive, efforts to offer basically the same services, which would be to promote the awareness of the availability of the lot and the utilization of, common listing site of multiple listing services. Within the last 2 weeks, there was a very significant court case where a national organization, which basically I would call is a super MLS, was sued on basically violating antitrust laws. In all the realtors were basically charging the same percentage for listing, more or less. And that is now being looked upon as the basis for the breakup of the industry and more competitive rates. In listing a property, I think a seller has to consider the economic environment. Right now, we are at an all-time high in terms of interest rates. So no matter how eager someone might be to acquire a property, with a vacant lot, you not only have to negotiate the cost of the lot, but also the cost of construction. In the last 2 years, construction costs, I read this figure, I didn't see the backup, but construction costs have gone up fourfold. Which means, materials, labor pose a challenge. And right now, you are looking at probably what a lot of people would consider to be a dormant period in the real estate market, just before the holiday, for Christmas, New Year's coming along, people have kids in school, even if they do want to move, it's going to take at least a year to organize and construct a house there. My suggestion would be that you do this, because some preliminary work has been done, that you revisit those numbers, because I'm sure that inflation has bumped this up, in terms of what value there is there. Speak to the village assessor, get a feel for what lots might be worth. Lannon is no longer, in my opinion, viewed in isolation, but instead kind of a outplay of Menominee Falls and some parts of Lisbon. And those lot prices, I think, have some bearing on it. What you do have is a fully serviceable lot, sewer, water, and no likely assessment for roadway improvement, because everyone benefited from the installation of the water lines there, so that's beneficial. And once preliminary information is obtained, maybe the board can meet in closed session and then decide what it wants to do. And perhaps you might even want to reach out to MLS to see if a one-party type listing can be subscribed to, so that the village put forth that information and gets it out there. And word of mouth too. But first you have to have a decent notion as to what you want this transaction to yield, and whether this is the best time to go out and sell it. So that would be my recommended approach.
Well, we did an initial market assessment, and then we updated that market assessment. We are at 121, I think was the most recent one that we got.
That's one from Dawn.
I think that's the one from Dawn, was 121 or 121.9, something like that. I didn't worry too much about the dollar amount because of the fact that it, like I said, if there's a bidding war, then we saw a recent listing that you and I were talking about that was at 300 and some thousand, which I just don't, that hasn't sold, so I don't know that that's a realistic comp to this. I guess if we decide, so you bring up a couple good issues. We have this in the budget for 2024. That means we could hold it till spring. Or we could inflate the price and we could artificially hold it till spring and see what kind of offers come in. I mean, there's no obligation to take any offers.
Correct.
I don't know that I want to be greedy about this. I think if you decide to sell something, you put a price on it and then you sell it. I mean, that's just my personal thing. I guess I'm more interested about one of the things that if I'm gonna take on this project within the board is I want to know about in the listing what kind of language do I have to have in there to protect that roadway? To make sure that if you are buying this lot, that you understand that, yes, exactly, that prior to construction, a letter of credit will be required to ensure any damage done to any, accesses, stuff like that.
Can we,
Because we can do that right in.
can we do that? Cause it's a private road. We don't own that road. And it's a private road. That'd be just like the village dictating verbiage for something over by Marv. That's private road. They have an association, they have,
I think
you
what
know-
we'd be doing is we would be saying that letter of credit would be due to the other, it wouldn't be to the village of Lannon. The land, once the village of Lannon sells this thing, we don't, right, we don't get involved with that. If they contract with a buyer, what we'd be doing is issuing that to the other homeowners, correct?
I was just gonna say, I don't think it's black and white, because right now, since the village owns that lot and it has rightful access. It is like a gray area, it's a party to the maintenance
It's like a
agreement,
1/5 owner. By
right,
proxy almost.
of a private asset, so it's.
but once it's sold, we would have no dictation of any of that.
Yeah, and that's where.
Because, I mean, it has to be
look at-
sold first before it can be built on.
Yeah, that,
So,
that goes back to what Patrick said about Whispering Ridge, when Marv bought the condos and built it
but
up.
the
village did a
association,
couple things
the
to make sure-
association put that verbiage in there, not the village. So those other 4 homes back there who already have that maintenance agreement would have to have that verbiage for the new owner. That's
So-
not our responsibility.
So here's an idea you may or may not wanna take. That 1985 agreement can only be revised by all parties.
Right.
So if the village wanted to be the propellant to say, hey, let's revise this agreement. And put something in there that requires bonding of the road if anyone's going to be doing major work on it. But I mean, that's something that
Well,
Von
I
Dyson will have
look
to
at it
maybe
more as a
consider.
disclosure, almost like a property condition report. It's more of a disclosure saying that to whoever buys this lot, be aware that the homeowners may require you to post a letter of credit. I mean, it's not anything that the village is going to require, that the current owner being the village is going to require. It would be more of a notification to say, if you intend to buy this.
But
lot,
wouldn't
yeah,
those other homeowners have to come to us first and say, hey, since you're selling this lot, we want. And since you're one of the owners, we want to do this, or like Patrick said, we are the propellant of that verbiage,
Yeah.
but.
Couldn't it be, this is a question for Hector, couldn't it be put in the deed? Couldn't you record it with Waukesha County as part of the deed, and make it? You know, if you damage the road, you're gonna have to fix it type thing, and that just takes it completely off of us, cause then they're gonna know it when they buy it through the title search. If they go in and damage that road, they're gonna have to fix it,
Well,
or agree with the other owners on how to address that. You know, I think that might be a valid.
there are a number of unknowns here, namely the actual subcondition of that roadway. We know that the surface is relatively new. We do not have any jurisdiction over the private road except to the extent that we have an interest in that plot. And that plot is accessible by the group of owners there. And we would be in the minority if they decided to assess. I do not believe that they have assessed themselves in the past for the improvement of that road, if I'm not mistaken. So they've survived this long and they have built out all but one lot with the condition of the road being what it was before. And now, hopefully, it's been reinforced. At this point, without knowing more, the most that I would recommend is that there be a disclaimer that access to the road is through a private easement, and that we make the documents available to the buyer and let the buyer make a determination. I would hope that the buyer would have a self-interest in making sure that in contracting with a builder or contractors, that they take efforts to protect the condition of the road. I'm not sure exactly how you do that, short of having some kind of a weighing station at the entrance there, not allow heavy deliveries, but that they be aware that potentially if it's damaged, they may be assessed by the surrounding property owners, and that we minimize our involvement in the policing of that aspect as much as possible. Right.
Yeah, I think on a typical project where we deal with heavy equipment working in areas where there's, somewhat depreciated asset is just as simple as before and after pictures. What's easy about those situations is we're working for the municipality. And we're able to do that. We're staying involved, but
Bless you.
thank you. But in this case, you're right, once you sell it, it's kind of up to whatever the terms of this agreement are, unless the agreement is amended.
And what we're tiptoeing around here is the actual execution of what's gonna happen here, and here's my prediction. I see if I step into this role as twofold, a conduit between the village and the other neighbors that are there, and a conduit to the listing agent, or, to facilitate the sale. And what's gonna happen is anybody who goes in there and makes an offer, they're going to be bombarded by the other neighbors, and they're gonna say, you better not think you're gonna build on this lot, because, so this is why I'm saying preemptively that in the listing, I would almost like in a disclosure saying that you are entering into a private access, a lot that's serviced by a private access road, which is controlled by more, but that is controlled by the totality of all parties adjoining, that own property adjoining to that. So it's almost like, I just feel like to cover our assets, we want to get that in the listing contract right up front, so that nobody can buy a lot and then come back and say, well, these neighbors are nuts, they don't want me here, because we know that the neighbors don't want another neighbor.
So can it be put in the, once it's for sale with the realtor, can't that be added? So before they buy it, they sign it, if they're going to build, they are responsible for the road. Whoever they hire to build with will be responsible for fixing the road.
And I think that's all I want to do, is I want to do disclosure. I don't want to manage escrow. I don't want
But
to
the
take
realtor
letter
would
credit.
disclose
I
it.
want to disclose that this property comes with the
An easement, access.
any access easement.
Period.
Yeah.
So
I think
with,
that's all.
we could probably, I think we could probably tiptoe around this for hours. So
Yeah.
I think what I'm gonna recommend that we do is that I'm gonna recommend that somebody formulates a motion to appoint you as this designee, and that you kind of vet out any further details and kind of come back to us next month, perhaps with a proposed course of action, a listing agent, a fee structure, any of these little details that you might want to include, and you and Hector can hammer out some of those things about
Yep.
how you want to have that done.
Yeah, I like that.
Come back next month, and it's not going anywhere.
Right, you're right.
I'll make a motion that we designate trustee Lake to be our liaison for the village property off of Good Hope Road. And that she coordinates a plan of action and contacts or works with village council, and then gets back to us next month with her findings or her resolutions. Yes, Hector.
And also that any inquiry that anybody gets about this lot from the neighbors or whoever be directed to Ms. Lake.
Okay, and any and all inquiries related to the lot be directed towards trustee Lake.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll talk after. Item 18. Discussion of possible action regarding the founding of a permanent Christmas tree at Village Hall due to a lack of inventory from Ideal Landscape as previously proposed and approved. So as you all know, last month we approved this awesome deal to get a 20-foot pre-lit and decorated tree delivered and installed. They don't exist anymore. So I've been going back and forth with Ron a little bit, and Colleen a little bit, and her tree, and ultimately, when we were getting down to it, Colleen and I came to the conclusion, well, why not just put a new tree in out here where the old one was? So that's what we have before us here is a couple of proposals from Johnson Nursery. One is a smaller tree and a different species than the other one. What they are, they're species, right?
Yep.
Varieties, yeah.
Yeah, genus, species, whatever. So one's a 9-foot Norway spruce, which my understanding is a kind of a rangy, faster growing species like the one that was out here before. That's less than half of the price of the other one, which is a fat Albert spruce at 14 feet, but which requires, due to its size, the installation costs are significantly higher, but apparently
Can I kind of talk to this a little bit?
Yep, I'm getting there.
Okay.
But this one will apparently not grow as quick.
Right.
So Colleen met with them today, I believe, right, as well? So if you wanna fill in the blanks here.
Okay. So the $1,800 quote is for a bulb tree. The problem is that when we remove the old tree, we ground out the stump to 6 inches underground, and underneath there is a complete root system, which will make it impossible for us to dig a hole and put a bulb tree in, okay? So when we were talking about the $1,800 tree, he said you're gonna have to have grind and go come back and go down 24 inches, and grind and go says they don't even go down 24 inches, and so you need a backhoe and blah, 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 blah. Plus, what we had there was a Colorado spruce, and this Norway spruce is a similar variety, and it grows very quick. It's one of the quicker growing trees, and we don't want to have a huge tree over here. That was the problem that caused us to remove the other one. So after talking more about what we wanted to use this for, and I wanted to be a nice Christmas tree and, you know, blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, you should get this fat Albert because it's a slow growing variety. He says 6 inches a year. So in 20 years, it goes from a 14-foot to maybe a 24-foot tree. But it doesn't need to have pruning to keep it in that nice Christmas tree shape. So he says, definitely do this bigger one. It's 14 feet now. And it has to be spayed in, okay, you know, the big spade thing. And he says, in order to do that, we have to bring a backhoe in and we have to dig a 9-foot hole. And that will get rid of all of our root system so that we can bring this tree in. So yes, it is more expensive, but I like it better from the standpoint that in 20 years, we're not gonna be cutting it down. It'll be there. We are gonna have to go through this Christmas tree nightmare every damn year, and I don't wanna do that. It solves the problem of one contractor dealing with the root system that's in there rather than trying to get, you know, cut and go to come back and do more root system stuff, which is gonna be more expensive. And I already had Digger's Hotline mark everything, and we reviewed all that, and we moved the placement of the tree a little bit closer to the building so that it's a little bit more out of the right of way while still being balanced. And so I would suggest that we find the money to do the bigger, better tree. Now, that's the other question is where are we gonna fund this from?
Well, I have a
Free money
quick
from the
question
state.
for you too, though. Why, I mean, I understand planting of a new tree, but. Have you ever thought about just getting a 12-foot artificial tree? Pre-lit. Cause what?
They'll probably blow over.
I think you put sandbags at the bottom of the base to keep it from doing that, but. I mean, it's just,
They're about $800.
right, Costco would cut one that's, I think, right around that range, it's pre-lit. You know,
I can see that walking away pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna set it up and take it down. I mean, it's gonna be enough to put lights on this thing every year, or, you know, I don't know if we can leave lights on it, but
We did on the other.
Yeah,
Yeah, the lights grew right into the limb.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to be dealt with and redone every couple of years as the thing grows, right? But I think if we put that on a regular schedule every 3 years or something, go in there and clip them off and restring them. It's a good summer project.
Summer.
and the other key thing.
public works, public works.
The other key thing here is that we are quickly approaching December 1st, which is the tree lighting. So right now I'm talking to Brian and just for your information, I did call other landscapers and some just couldn't do it. You know, you kind of have to have a special sweet spot for a 14-foot tree, and not everybody does that. But I did run it past some other people and they said that this is a reasonable bid. They wouldn't do it for this cost, you know, so I've kind of vetted the pricing a little bit too, because I was a little bit, I'm like, $4,000, it seems like a lot, but in the industry, you know, that's already a 20-year-old tree that you're moving, so.
Anybody got a Charlie Brown Christmas tree?
When would we get it? We could get it before Thanksgiving. And it could be decorated right after Thanksgiving so that we could have a tree lighting on December 1st. But that's assuming that we take some action tonight.
I don't have a problem with taking action, I have a problem with where we find the $4,050.
Right. We take 190 off that. Now, we had 5,000 for ARPA funds for decorations. That we haven't, I mean, I don't know, I mean.
I mean,
it's
that's,
still ARPA.
that's, I mean, it is beautification to the village, I mean, I guess that's one pot to pull from, I guess.
Didn't you just get government money? The cushion I just heard about.
There's the 16, oh, let's get a bigger tree, we got 60,000.
Right. I think,
I mean,
I don't know,
what was that, Brenda?
there is money in the general fund, but.
Right, and do we have, you know,
It
different,
is a capital project, you're only gonna plant a tree.
Right.
right, right.
Hurry up,
Yeah, that's a
Christmas
good
is
point.
coming.
Yeah,
Village Hall's in the TIF district, go there.
let's we get like a corporate sponsor, like Strand or someone,
Yeah.
a corporate sponsor. I mean, they've taken so much money from the village already, they could give a little back,
Reason and Strand.
yeah.
Join venture.
Don't forget Lake Country Inspections.
Yeah, we got them all in one room.
It's got their fee schedule increase.
All right, well, I want to make a motion then that we approve of quote number 109859 for the Fat Albert spruce to be installed prior to Thanksgiving this year in the amount of $4,050 minus tax. Using general fund.
General fund and do whatever else we have to do at a later date. We don't have to.
You don't have to designate that, okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion about the 14-foot at Albert spruce?
I don't think they're mean.
Anybody have a preference on how many needles we have?
Or how
The color of the lights or, yeah, nothing?
Green.
I heard the
Okay,
topper was pretty.
all those in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Colleen. Item 19, discussion of possible action regarding an update on the USDA RD water system expansion project contingency budget. This one's you, Ben.
Okay, so you'll see these 2 pages in your packet. Been having conversations with USDA and I think it would help them and to an extent the village to simplify the use of the contingency funds. Last time you heard me talk about that, it was going to be some for electrical upgrades, some for power, some for water mains, some for SCADA, etc. USDA kind of reiterated that since 2023, they've had a lot of projects going over budget and you know, given the lead times on some of the things that we previously wanted to use the funds on, they didn't require, but definitely steered us toward, hey, can you prioritize water main on this and just whatever you're gonna do, get it done by the end of next year. So we put together this plan. It still has generators in here and a couple of things that are cash allowances in the well contract bid that Mid-City has already. So what kind of consequently what this would mean, and I sent this to USDA and I'm waiting to hear back from them still in writing. But consequently, what this would mean is the village would go ahead possibly in the spring with extending water main down Good Hope Road. Now, the contingency funds we're expecting would get the water main as far as the bug line, which is a start. But it's just kind of one of these things where I had a brief discussion after a previous meeting with Ron and Patrick that, you know, in 5 years from now, the village is going to have done multiple of these projects and put them out of multiple pots. And I think you've heard me talk about the complexities of that. And if USDA is saying just please make this more simple, then this is kind of the direction that this is moving in. So this at this point is just an update. You'll see on the first page kind of a summary of all the funding, the obligated costs, the progress on the draws, and the projected fund balance. And then the second page, which is the long horizontal page, just an update on where and how different funds would be proposed to be spent. And really it's the derivative becomes what you spend on water main, which is in the last row on that second page, trying to zero out the remaining funds. So anticipated next steps are hearing back from USDA. And if they give thumbs up on that, we would design approximately 1,600 feet of water main going on Good Hope Road. And then that fits within Vinton's contract as a change order. So we would issue a cost proposal request to them to get formal pricing back. And then get the final verification or approval from USDA and then go ahead and do that. So just wanted everyone to know that's kind of the direction that it's moving. Some of the other I'll say ramifications of that are some of the electrical upgrades at Whispering Ridge that we talked about previously as part of this contract. The village may need to do as just a standalone project. Similarly with SCADA, rather than do that out of USDA funds, that might need to be just a standalone project. But again, backup power generators are part of this, and in Mid-City is we've got them the information they need to get the pricing, so we're waiting on pricing back. So at this point, I don't believe there's any action necessary, but just wanted to make you aware.
The extension going down Good Hope then would not go to the north side into those two manufacturing facilities because they're on the other side of the bug line, correct?
Correct.
But the boundaries of the user. The foundry is a water user.
Yeah, big foundry, yes.
So approximately how far, give us like.
Yeah, it-
1,600 feet gets us how far? To the
Yeah,
bug
to the
line,
bug line,
basically?
to the bug line. Yep, the whole run from where the hydrant is here. Close to the intersection on
Yep.
Main Street. The whole run to town line would be about 4,000 feet, maybe 4,200 feet. So this doesn't quite get you halfway.
But I guess, right,
That's gonna get you past the bug line.
To the bug line.
that'd be set up nicely for Collie Farm once that starts to
Correct.
go.
So it kind of checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, some folks will say, well, shoot, that's also a TID project, right? Just do the whole thing. USDA rightfully so is like. They want one contract just for their money. They don't want to mix their grant money with any other money, otherwise it kind of erodes.
Yep.
The perception that you need the money. So. If it goes this route, it'll be an inconvenience to people that actually, drive on that road or whatever, because it'll be under construction. Half of it'll be under construction for a year, and then sometime when you decide to do the rest of it, the rest of it will get tore up. But that's just kind of the way it might work out.
Gotta get done sooner or later, so.
I don't wanna see ESI in this village ever again.
Yeah. Kind of along with that, just as an FYI. Maybe from the engineering report. We did complete and submit on. October 27th, a DOT funding application for. Reconstruction of Good Hope Road, and then on November 1st, we did submit a separate local road improvement program, also with that funded thing. Just small amounts of money there, but more of an entitlement type of program submitted for that for Good Hope Road also. So kind of trying to build this up that along that vein of we know it's going to be done at some point in the next 5 years. Starting to get some of these things lined up.
Then I have a question for you, since we're going that way on West Line Business Road. With the water, and AFW used a lot of water, what kind of pressure will it put on the system?
Yeah, potentially that could stress the system a lot, potentially. So what reminds me of, we'll have to figure that out a little bit. But for example, Lakeshore Burial Vault, under a conditional use permit, is allowed to keep their private well for manufacturing purposes. It might have to be something similar. Same with Chemray. Conditional use permit, keep their well for manufacturing, but their kind of bathrooms and just normal domestic plumbing is on village water. Might have to be something similar for it. They'd be a significant water user, and I can tell you, if we had a third well and a water tower online, it'd be a good deal, but just don't know.
There's a window there that what we talked about before materializes. But...
Sure.
Any other questions for Ben on that topic? Otherwise, we'll move on. I don't think we need any action here. Item 20, discussion of possible action regarding payment application for Mid-City Construction for private property water service contract.
No action needed for this. We were looking into, there was an invoice that the village board approved in 2022 that didn't get paid for the private lateral service. So I requested this agenda item be added in case there wasn't board approval, but I looked back and there was, and then I went ahead and submitted a payment request for it. So the quarry fund is paying those invoices on that contract, so.
Okay.
Submitted a.
So nothing needed there?
Correct.
Speaking of quarry funds, how much is left in there?
Yeah, actually, it's like 1.5 million. So a couple of things to do with that is, and I can work with Brenda on this. There were a couple aspects of the USDA's applicant contribution that were assumed that the village would get reimbursed through the quarry fund to make their applicant contribution. So that could potentially be a big chunk, and some of our fees and some of Hector and even John Macy's fees. So, you know, between all of those, that's probably 300,000 or 400,000. So that still leaves you with about $1 million. What Sarah Nunn brought to our attention was, you'll recall that I think it was up to $2,000, taking into account the change order for the time delays on well abandonments. And it turns out that Sarah gave us the number of people that actually abandoned their wells, in addition to the number of well operation permits that the village has issued. And those two don't even account for half of the private wells that are out there. So what that means is a lot of people just opted to do nothing. So that was, you know, at $2,000 per well, that was just kind of sitting there that can get reallocated to something else, depending on what the village would want to do with that.
So we have to figure out some kind of penalties or inspection to handle the wells that aren't done.
Potentially.
Yeah, I think that'll be something we'll talk about at that meeting tomorrow.
Well, they didn't apply, it's operating, but they're done.
Yeah. Right, so
That's why.
that spins into a different category of open issues, perhaps with the water project and pending requirements and lapse dates and things like that, that the board may have to consider at some point on the whole. But as far as the funding goes, we should probably recheck the terms of the village's agreement with the Waukesha County Community Foundation, because I think it was after a certain number of years, unused funds get returned to the village. They're earmarked due to the agreements with each of the quarries that they can be used just on water related things. But the Waukesha County Community Foundation is only holding those funds for a certain period of time.
Well, and we still have the 4 private property connections up on around Custer Lane there too, right?
Correct, right.
And those are gonna be costly.
Yeah, and that's still, no decision has been made on that since they're outside of the scope of the original USDA project. But that's one of those things where, from the quarry's perspective, there was actually a map of these funds are to be used first or primarily to help with the transition of these properties formerly in the well guarantee area to transition onto municipal water. The village has accomplished that and there's funds left over, so the quarry fund committee has to kind of evaluate, okay, now to what extent do you want to look at where that money gets used. For example, a logical line to think about is, if we do Good Hope Road, what about the private laterals on Good Hope Road? You know, things like that.
One of the other things that we talked about quite a while back when we thought we were gonna have a fairly significant surplus was maybe we go and put in private laterals in Land Village Hills ahead of any water. You know, get them in the ground now.
Yeah.
That way the homeowners don't have to pay for that when water gets up there.
Yeah.
And that's still within the well of guarantee area.
Well, yeah, and I think we haven't checked in for a while with the quarries on this thought process, and just for for the board's sake, the Corey Fund Committee is made up of one village trustee and two kind of appointees at large. So currently who sits on that are Ron, Mike Jansen and Sarah Johnson. But then there are kind of non-voting members of the committee, which include representatives from Hallquist and from Land and Stone Products. Why do I bring that up? Again, to underscore that the Corey's primary interest is that, you know, that first tier of properties gets addressed, and then beyond that, that it just generically gets used on water as opposed to other uses, but that committee will have to kind of consider those things. Once the funds get returned to the village, then presumably that committee dissolves and it's under the purview of the board.
Any other questions for Ben before we move on? Okay, item 21. Preliminary discussion and possible action on the possibility of holding a public safety referendum. What? Okay, so you guys probably heard me mention this. I think I brought this up in our budget meetings. Every year we struggle to balance the budget. Every year our cost goes up for
Fire protection.
yeah, public safety stuff, fire protection and our own police department. As we discussed a little earlier tonight, we are getting some more funding from the shared revenue, the state shared revenue funding. That was kind of the point of them opening up the coffers a little bit, if you will, is because they know that pretty much with levy limits in place, every community in Wisconsin is struggling with the rising costs of public safety stuff. So they specifically referenced EMS service in here as a target for this funding, but it's a much broader window than just that. So that will certainly help. But many of you are probably aware that we've also, if you visit some of the Facebook groups, there's also a large number of complaints about the lack of police presence in the village, or police enforcement in the village, or anything related to the police in the village. I've personally felt for a while that I would love to see more coverage, more officers. But for anybody that actually goes to the budget meetings or understands the budget knows that we just can't do that. We can't afford it. We need money. A big topic of discussion when we initiated the water project was, why isn't this being put to a referendum? You know, we should have referendums. Well, we have an opportunity for both now. We have an opportunity for a referendum, and we have an opportunity for people to put their money where their mouth is. And if you want better coverage and more police officers and presumably a safer community in that regard, along with helping offset some of the increasing costs of our fire protection services, here's an opportunity to do that. So I wanted to take this opportunity to just float the idea past the board, get kind of a sense of where people were feeling. I did find, and I handed everyone out one of these sheets from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue that kind of outlines the referendum process and criteria. This is something that we can do using a certain process. But it has to be organized, it has to be done a certain way and done with a certain timing. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
This would not affect anything next year. This would be something that would go on presumably the spring ballot in April. To be brought forward for consideration, assuming it passes, for the budget next fall which would be for the budget year 2025. So it's gonna be a while before we can see any effects of this. Which I felt was all the more reason to get the ball rolling. The challenge that we have as a board is, from a policy standpoint, do we want to do this? Do we feel we need to do this? And if the answers to those two questions are yes, then how much do we want to ask for? Right? How much do we think we need? And then is this going to be a one-time or an ongoing? There's some organizational considerations that need to be made when you formulate this for the ballot. I'll open it up to some thoughts.
Are you going to make this strictly for public safety,
Yes,
an issue and nothing else?
yes.
Well, I don't think there's really too much thought that has to go into it, other than the amount that we want to fund it.
And if we wanna do it one time or continuing.
Yeah.
I think a continuing
I
would
think
probably
be the best.
some sort of escalator based on. Either cost of living allowance, it's probably the easiest way to adjust it.
I don't think the people are looking for a one-time issue. They're looking for it to be long-term.
Right.
Yeah,
Protection.
yeah, I agree. So is anybody opposed to the idea? Does anybody, think this is that we should go down this path? A non-binding. referendum? Yeah, we've had those before. I guess what, I don't think any of us could probably even hazard a reasonable or logical guess as to what that amount might be. I think what we should probably do is if we want to go, or if you want to allow me to continue to investigate this with Brenda and Wendy. And kind of look at what this might look like from a financial aspect, and then I can come back with some suggestions, but. Again, since this has to go on the April ballot, and then is there any kind of crazy noticing requirements for this? Like
You have to submit the ballot question 70 days prior to the vote. And then the other issue is you can engage in information sharing, but you can't campaign for a particular outcome as such. There were a number of these, excuse me, referenda, votes that took place in western Waukesha County with regard to the Western Lakes Fire Department. And only 2 out of 7 communities approved the increase. And then another fire district had a referendum, and the city of Delafield either purposefully or inadvertently put forth an amount that was approved, but it was $300,000 short of what their fair share would be in the western in that fire district, excuse me. So I think that these referenda are occurring more frequently. But I think the more often you have it, the more voter resistance that there is to it. I believe that perhaps maybe projecting what your costs are gonna go, where they're gonna go, because you have two things working. One, you can't increase your budget amount by anything greater than your net new construction. And right now, we're in good shape, but at some point, as construction slows down in the community, you're gonna run into that problem. A lot of communities are having that. And secondly, public safety services are not subject to Act 10. So in other words, there are very active union negotiations, and the costs are increasing disproportionately to the cost of other municipal services, which is the labor and training, so forth. So it is going to be a very challenging area. And then here we contract for fire services, and so there's that what I would call the administrative cushion that we also have to pick up for not having our own facility. To give you an example, the village of Elm Grove, which has about 6,200 people, they're losing rapidly a number of paid on call volunteer firemen. They're seriously studying contracting out for EMS and public safety services. It's going to cost them a minimum of $1 million a year more.
More.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah. So it's a challenging area.
Oh, and Patrick, when we were doing our budget workshops, I think it was Wendy and Brenda were explaining how the village of Menominee Falls, which charges us for our fire protection, how that contract is going to kind of level off a little bit, right? Like, what was there was a formula that's used for that, so like all those things have to be taken into consideration, like, would Chief Bell propose 2 new full-time police officers, and what does that money look like?
One full-time. and
But
then
this
more
referendum,
yeah.
you know, he's proposed one, but maybe this referendum, he's going to say, well, if we really want to prioritize public safety, then my recommendation is that we do whatever. So I mean, you know, to come up with a number, you're gonna have to consult with the fire and the police and, you know, because it is the biggest part of our budget for sure.
Can this also go in August, or is that too late? The August ballot? I mean, it's cutting it close, obviously.
It said it can go on any normally scheduled election ballot. That's true. Right? So, I mean, and I think. Right.
Yeah, because I think we're cutting it close to try to get in April, if we're gonna have it 70 days before. And there's still a lot of information to obtain. Now, maybe we can obtain that information fairly quickly, but if it works out, great. If not,
Yeah, we'll just put it on.
yeah, we'll just put it off. But I mean, I as we all know, everyone who was in that workshop and Jerry, you've been in all of them too. I mean, it doesn't matter. You would think with all the development and all the new revenue that we were bringing in, with all these high dollar condos and homes, that we'd be fine with our budget. And every year we're trying to figure out how we're gonna pay. I mean, we're always scraping by trying to, you know, make it work. And it never adds up. Just
And that's just to keep things as they are.
as they are,
Much
right?
less to
Getting
respond to the growth.
pay increases and equipment, new equipment when it's needed, it's tough. So I don't know, I mean, I think the referendum is our best option. And hopefully, those who look at it would see the benefit of doing it, but that's totally up to them. I mean, we have no say about that. All we can do is say, here's what we're proposing, here's why we're proposing, here's the dollar amount. And leave it at that, and chips fall where they may. I mean, that's the only thing we can do.
Yeah.
And Hamilton just did it. Sent out that informational letter that we all got, we saw what they did.
Well, I think if we do the August ballot, that at least gets us closer to making a decision for when we meet in October for the next budget. Whereas if we do it in April, we can't change the budget.
Well, I don't think that part really matters,
Yeah.
because really, this wouldn't take effect until 2025 anyways.
Right.
Right, but if
So-
we have all that extra time, this way we're closer to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, well, like I said, well, I said, let's get the information. Let's see if we can compile it before. If it doesn't work out, then we do the August ballot, you know.
Shoot for April and be satisfied if we don't do it until August. That's all.
Can be.
What is the difference between a referendum and a resolution? Exactly.
It might be, well, it was mentioned that
Yeah. Amy
an
mentioned
advisory,
that.
referendum can be held, but here, this is a specific statutory mechanism for, exceeding levy limits. Specifically, legislatively prescribed. A resolution is just basically something that passed by the governing board, whereas a referendum requires the affirmative support of those voting who will be paying the increase in taxes also.
Right. So the other way that we could approach this, and I'll just throw this out there as a what if, is it might be easier to back into this number, or at least come at it from both sides if we think about, well, what do we think is reasonable to ask each household in the village to pay for this added protection? In other words, if there's 600 tax keys in the village and we come to the number of, we want to ask for $100,000, whatever it is. And we look at it as, well, that's $140 per household. That seems reasonable. Or at least to us anyway. Now, some people are probably like, you're out of your mind. Other people are probably, yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's gonna be all over the board, right? I mean, we've got a pretty wide range of demographics in this village. So just another thought for how to get to a number.
But as we talked about in the budget meeting, you gotta tie it to the public safety and what you're gonna get for it. You're gonna increase the
Right.
police department. I think that's number one. The fire department goes without saying, but you're gonna increase police department.
Yeah, that's the main goal. That is the main goal is to, I mean, the fire is gonna be what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
It's mandated, it's controlled by Menominee Falls and the contract. The rate's gonna be what it is. It's a calculation. It's a very basic calculation that gets, redone every 5 years.
And in the meantime, it's done by population.
Yeah.
It's a fixed number.
Yeah, but even then, it's like it only gets recalced every 5 years.
Right.
So,
One of the advantages that we have now is we're pretty much at the end of our population.
Yes.
yeah, and they
It's still
keep
growing.
cranking, they
Yeah,
keep
a lot of
trying to compete with Sussex.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, balls is building.
That's how we looked at it when we made the deal. They had a whole lot more land than us.
so,
Well, do you need a motion, or to give you authority to keep proceeding with your. Your inquiries and so forth, because if that's the case, I'll make a motion that we allow President Yates to continue on with his inquiries in regards to the referendum with himself, Wendy Younger, and Brenda.
Maybe we put in there with the idea of having something affirmative for the April ballot. Shoot for that, and if we don't, then we use August as a backup. Because the sooner we get it, the better.
Yeah.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Did you get that, Brenda? Do we have any other discussion? Obviously, I'll confer with, Hector and Trace on that as well to make sure we're meeting statutory obligations, but. Other than that, good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for considering that. Item 22, discussion and possible action on the status of the collection of the utility fees from RHP. So we're getting rather lengthy here, but I will give you a bit of an update on this. We've had some discussions in the past several months with RHP. Initially it was just me, and then it got down to, once we kind of vetted out some of the meat, then I had a conference call, with Trace, and Ben and myself and the Bobby from RHP. You know, they're looking for some sort of concession. I've reiterated again over and over and over that the water portion of the bill is non-negotiable. That is not changing. We don't have the power to do so. At the end of our call, he suggested that we send him a, written proposal. And I reminded him that with all due respect, we had given him a written proposal in the form of a bill. That was our proposal. We're not going to negotiate against ourselves. You give us a proposal of what you're asking. So that was, I provided Bobby from RHP some supporting documentation, some of which has been shared with you folks in terms of information that we received from Sarah at Mid-Cities about communications with them, indicating that there was high water usage going back to January. And we've had some subsequent conversations with Hector. And that's kind of where things are at now. We're kind of the balls in their court. I think we're waiting to hear back from them. We've reminded them that there are some statutory consequences that go along with letting this bill hang out in forms of late fees that we are also unable to do anything about. Those are statutorily required. We've made that clear, and Hector, if you had any background information that you felt was appropriate to share, please do so.
I checked this afternoon and Trace had not heard anything from RHP. These folks are not innocent, naive, first time buyers. They literally own a multitude of the complexes throughout the country. And in the prior telephone conversation that was had with their representative, they were reminded of the fact that the village had given them a break with regards to the sewer fees as an incentive to get them to basically upgrade their distribution system. In addition, we are absolutely convinced that if they didn't do their due diligence, their recourse is against their seller unless they may have bought the property as is, in which case they only have themselves to blame. So the process is one whereby, because of the magnitude of the amount owed, typically when a taxpayer does not pay the taxes, and we submit that information to the county holds us harmless with regards to the unpaid taxes. They advance the money back to us. In a situation where a utility bill such as this exceeds $50,000, the county basically takes a step back and does not participate in any collection efforts. So we're looking at, if they do not pay, we're basically looking at starting a lawsuit to get a judgment to collect against the asset, given the amount of money at stake, which is in excess of $300,000. I have discussed this with Trace, and we've concluded that we're going to have to be aggressive because the court process itself is just going to slow things down to begin with. And the village is aware of the fact that the PSC previously looked at our situation critically with regards to our rates. And we don't want to do anything to trip that review sooner than it has to be.
Secondarily, I also had received some copies of some communications that were sent out to residents of Land and Estates, and I've asked for some clarification about the inference that some of the charges that they are passing along to the residents there are somehow or in any way a village charge or a municipal charge. They've kind of made that impression that, well, here's what we're gonna charge for water, here's what we're gonna charge for sewer, and well, we have to do this because the village is charging it. Well, our rates are still the same. We have the same arrangement with them for their master meter and the usage rates that we've had since day one. So I didn't really appreciate that they had kind of given that impression and made it kind of look like we had were the cause of this. If they want to recover those dollars for operating the system, that's within their right, but call it what it is, right? So anyway, that's stay tuned on that one.
What length of time are we giving them? Before we start any action?
How long are we
Time
giving?
are we got
Oh,
before we take any legal action?
January,
January 1st?
the end of January. Yeah.
What is your anticipated cost for a legal action to recover the 300,000+?
I've never handled one before, and in fact, we tried to get the county to join in with us. They said no. They did agree
They're
to
good at
lend
saying
us some of their pleading, which in looking at them, I wonder whether the county really does pursue many tax collection matters. I think because of the rising property values in Waukesha County, so long as the county gets a judgment or there's a lien on it, eventually somebody buys the property, and it's the insistence of the buyer that it be cleared. And that's how they clear things.
Yeah, so they're not really used to fighting for things, yeah.
No. So I'm sorry, I can't specifically answer that.
So we can, and can we do something similar with them if we need to? Can we put a lien on the property?
In effect, it will be, yes, once we get the judgment.
And they have an annual fees that the park pays to the village as well, correct?
Yes.
And what control do we have over that fee?
There's gotta be a rational relationship between the cost to the village and the fee assessed. That can't just be
Arbitrary number.
yeah. And there's a statutory provision that allows people that are assessed fees to go to the Department of Revenue, not even have to go to court, where they can challenge Yeah, yeah, and I did see that they're passing along the park fees as well to the residents.
We went through that with them 12 years ago or more. And the fees are also statutory and we couldn't do much with it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just trying to look for leverage
Yep.
points.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on that before we move on? Ben, did you have anything to add?
Nope.
23, discussion of possible action on payment of the bills.
Make a motion, we pay the bills.
And second,
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 24, engineers report. Anything to add, Ben?
Nothing in addition to what I've already discussed.
Item 25, attorney's report. Nothing further to add. President's report. I will just add that we, as some of you may have caught on to between meetings here earlier. Colleen and I have been working with Jan and through the urging of Liz to get some decorations up for the holidays. Thankfully, we got the tree taken care of tonight, so that's one big hurdle overcome. Colleen and I, between the two of us, we're gonna try to get some very, very, very cheap new avenue banners done. But frankly, it's a very tight window between now and the tree lighting and all that. We found the old banners that we had. I think the plan is to put up a bunch of those in the village, and it's gonna have to be it for this year. The wreaths are in pretty bad shape, to be honest. And honestly, I don't even know where they're at anymore, because I was out in the garage today and I didn't see them.
Really?
Yeah,
Last place
that's where they usually are when we go get them and put them up and take them down. We put them back in there. So I don't know if they got thrown away or what, but.
Yeah, we've got lights for the tree.
So the other thing that we're looking to do, Colleen and I are gonna try to put up those banners, the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving Day is the 23rd. I'm putting out a general call on the 24th for anybody who wants to help with lights on the tree or banners on the avenue.
Yeah, and there won't be much you can do for the banners, but the tree decorations or decorating around Village Hall, things of that nature. If you're available to come help out for a bit, probably early afternoon by the time we get done with the banners. 1 o'clock.
I think what I'd like to do is use the public announcement service for volunteers, just for the people who signed up for volunteers, and we'll put that out. And Patrick, what I'd like to do is maybe you and I early morning and then in the afternoon switch to other things.
Yep.
So, there'll be less traffic then.
Yep. The only other thing that I wanted to bring up and at least make the board aware of is that I got a rather disturbing report regarding some metering issues within the village, some apparent water loss issues that far exceed any rational explanation. So in my frustration with this ongoing and perpetual issue with this, I've called a meeting for tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock with some of the key people involved, Brenda, myself, Sarah, Ben, and Ron. Did I miss anybody there? And Terry from the finance committee, and Hector. So we've got a fairly decent sized group of people to try to figure out what the hell's actually going on with this and how these kinds of numbers can be coming out and still happening. So that's another one. Stay tuned for that.
Since we're talking about metering and fees and that.
Yes,
Have
the
we,
letters are legit.
I know we spoke about this with Hector a couple months back, but those who have not hooked up. The ordinance of changing it. Cause I think Brenda said they were only getting charged $40 or something, and we were gonna change it to what it was supposed to be for the average in the village. Have we?
I've asked about that, and I actually just reminded Hector of our quick inquiry regarding that, probably a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I'm on top of that.
Nope, that's fine. Yeah. All right,
And that's all I got. This has gone on long enough.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion in the second, a third, fourth, and fifth. Even Jerry got in on the action. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Another hour, remarking and all.